Hey second grade, so today we're going to talk about how do we make a multiplication sentence if we are given an array. So on my board today I have an array and I'm going to show you what to do to figure out, well, how do we make the multiplication sentence that goes along with this array. So the first thing we need to do is think about groups. Just like in my last video, when you see that multiplication sign, I want you to think of how many groups can I make? Groups of, right? Because when we think about our rows and our columns, we are making groups. So let's take a look at this array that I have on my board. So the first thing I need to do is start with either the rows or the columns. It really doesn't matter which one you start with because you're making groups either way. So I'm gonna start with the rows. So the first thing I like to do is circle my rows because that will give us a really good idea of how many groups you have and then how many are in each group. So let's do that first. Okay, so let's circle my rows. First, I have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows. So I have 3 rows or 3 groups. So I know that that's going to be the first number in my multiplication sentence because I have 3 groups of, and then I'll count how many are in my groups, but I'm going to write it down first. So I have 3 groups of, and now I count how many are in my groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know each group has 5 circles. So that's my second number in my multiplication sentence. So I know that I have 3 groups of 5. And then to find my answer, I count all of my circles. Now there's a couple of ways we can do this. You could just count them all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, or we can count by 5s. 5, 10, 15. Either way, we get the same answer. So I know 3 times 5, or 3 groups of 5, is 15 items. So now I'm going to show you the same thing, except instead of counting our rows as our groups, we're going to count our columns as our groups, and we're going to compare what our multiplication sentence looks like. Okay, so now I have the same array, except instead of counting my rows as my groups, I'm going to count my columns as my groups. So we do the same thing, except I'm going to circle my columns. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 columns or 5 groups that I have made. So I'm going to write that as my first number in my multiplication sentence. So I have 5 groups of, and then I need to look and see how many are in my group. So if I take a look, I can see that I have 3 circles in each group. So I have 5 groups of 3. And once again, I count all my circles, and if I count them all, I have 15. All right, so let's take a look at my 2 multiplication sentences that I made. I know this one has a little bit of a glare, but we know it's 15. So when I count my columns, I had 5 groups of 3, and when I count my rows, I had 3 groups of 5. And I get the same answer. 5 times 3 is 15, 3 times 5 is 15. So just like addition, how you can move the numbers around, the add-ins, and get the same answer, same thing happens with multiplication. I can move my 2 numbers that I'm multiplying around, I can switch them, and I will still have the same answer. So when you're looking at an array and you're trying to figure out what multiplication sentence goes with it, I recommend that you circle your groups first. Count how many groups, that's our first number, 5 groups of, and then we count how many are in each group. Then to find your answer, all you have to do is count all of the circles, however you want, by 1s, by 5s, whatever you want, and then that'll be your answer. So hopefully this helps. I hope it explained multiplying and how to figure out the multiplication sentence from an array a little bit more. Let me know if we need any more help or any more videos on multiplying.